Yeah, the Padres Dodger stuff is just unbelievable. So let's go here to the practicing guitarist. Lee John Darvis's masterful performance included a great approach when facing Otani. How did Cease fail with his electric stuff? This is a big key to the rest of the series, keeping Otani in check.
Well, Otani hits everybody. Let's understand that. Cease looked terribly out of sync in that game one. And that was bothersome to me because he was overthrowing his mechanics, his follow through, falling off the mound. That's why he had no location. That's why he threw 82 pitches and he really scuffled. They'll solve that. They get back in the video room, and I'm sure Ruben Niebla will point out to him this is what was not right in game one. And I have no doubt that I think Cease in his next playoff appearance will bounce back, but he was out of sync. But Darvish is so crafty, and Darvish had location, and Darvish was just really dominant, and he was throwing a wide variety of stuff that had the Dodgers, I thought, way off tempo in the course of the game. And in terms of Otani, hey, dude hit home runs against everybody, so don't be upset that Cease could not get him out, because a lot of guys could not get him out. But now they come back to Petco Park, and the Dodgers are going to have to compete against the bulk of the Padre pitching staff. They have to compete against a Padre lineup that is no longer afraid of Dodger pitching. And by the way, the intangible, they're going to have to compete in the bedlam that is going to be Padreville. And do you think these fans are going to show up with attitude on Tuesday and Wednesday night to kind of clinch this thing?
It's going to be great, man. Petco is going to be rocking. And San Diego is all behind the Padres. I mean, it's fantastic times. Cease is interesting. When his fastball is working, then everything works. And they were even talking about that with Darvish. I mean, Smoltz, we've talked about him in the past, how as a commentator, as a color commentator, he's really good and gives you a lot of technical insight into what their approach is. And you could see that he had this love affair with Darvish and all of the different pitches he had and how he used them and how he set batters up for their second and third time through the order.
Yeah, I thought he was fascinating. And the Cease thing, to me, it looks so mechanically driven that there were flaws in his delivery and how he was coming off the mound, his follow through. And that's why he just did not control the ball. And yeah, he did crank pitches. I mean, he was up at 97, 98 a little bit early in the game, but his location was a miss. Trust me, Ruben Niebla will solve that situation with Cease. Now we'll just have to see what Michael King does next.
We'll have to see. I'm looking forward to that. We have a day off today, but tomorrow as it starts again. Okay, let's go here to John. He goes, going to be a hot time in San Diego tomorrow. Get the Border Patrol in the southbound lanes of I-5 and I-15. Oh, you're from L.A.? Oh, hell no. Turn around now, please. LFG San Diego.
How about the Padres making the executive decision? You can buy what few playoff tickets we have, but if your credit card shows a zip code in Orange County or Los Angeles or Palm Springs, sorry, not for sale. Only selling to San Diego fans, only selling to Baja California fans, only selling to Padre fans going east towards Yuma. Just fascinating what they've done. But at the end of the day, I don't think very many tickets available at all, unless Padre fans are auctioning off on the secondary market their tickets. But so I don't know how many Dodger fans are going to be there. And this is a once in a lifetime experience, John. If these guys eliminate the Dodgers, then they get to go play probably Philadelphia. These guys won't be that far away from a World Series. So I can't see Padre fans auctioning off tickets right now.
Well, I'm sure Dodger fan would pay a pretty penny for that. I mean, Dodger fans, it's interesting. I saw a lot of video clips of different things from Dodger fans. Like in one case, you saw the one where Profar handed the ball to the fan in left field, as a kind gesture. Yeah. And then the guy threw it, and then someone else threw a ball and it caused the problem. And then there were a lot of people had a lot of video footage in and around Dodger Stadium and in the parking lot of all these fights, these brawls. And a lot of times it was Dodger fan fighting Dodger fan.
Don't drink. Just don't drink. Plain and simple. And also, I saw a video of what was going on down in the Padre bullpen, and fans leaning over, throwing balls and garbage into the Padre bullpen. And they had to restrain Jeremiah Estrada, who wanted to confront a fan who was looking down at him. He even jumped down there. So, I mean, security at the end of the day got there quickly and stopped it. But I guess the ideology, Dodger blue, the Dodger way, takes on a different dimension now because of what we saw on Sunday night.
It's weird because, as a kid, the Dodgers were always, the white, sparkling white uniform with the blue and the little splash of red with the number. The Dodgers were almost like the hero in a lot of cases. They were the good guys. It was Steve Garvey and Ron Say and all these guys that we generally thought were good guys. And the LA fans was a lot of the Hollywood, and that SoCal beach vibe. But things have changed. The Dodger fans seem to be a little more aggressive. They're more like a Philadelphia fan. What do you think?
Fueled by alcohol, baby. Don't drink before you go to the game. That's all I got to say. And the second thing I got to say, when we're done with this podcast, go to my website, read the column, One Man's Opinion column on my website, Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. Tell me whether you agree or disagree with what I wrote about Dodger fan and what just happened. On we go. Next question, John.
Okay, let's move on. Callan, afternoon, gents. Lee, should we be optimistic about Gary Bettman's remarks about a potential new CBA in a couple of years? What would you say are the most pressing issues the NHL needs to tackle?
Well, I think right now they've solved the Arizona Coyote crisis. I think they should be worried about small market Canada. I don't like anything I've seen that's happened in Calgary. If you go back and make a checklist of the players the ownership of the Calgary Flames has gotten rid of, that looks like a non-playoff franchise for years to come right now. I'd be worried about that. And I'm just worried about the economy and the dollar situation in Winnipeg, although they've signed some of their players now to contract extensions, Connor Hellebuck, etc. I'm just worried just because last year their attendance numbers were way down. You can't sustain operating an NHL franchise at NHL salaries and prices when you're drawing 13,000 fans per game. And the other thing, they're releasing the NHL rosters right now. I just saw the Montreal Canadiens roster, and of course they've lost their star right winger whom they acquired in Patrick Laine after the terrible hit that he suffered a badly sprained knee. I look at the Canadiens roster and say, who the hell are these guys? This is one of the youngest teams in the league, and of course the Anaheim Ducks are in the process of rebuild. Bettman, their revenue streams have increased. They are taking their salary cap, I think, to $92.5 million next season, which is a massive jump from $75 million where it was just a couple of years ago. So I would say economically, in a lot of markets, things are looking up for the National Hockey League, but I'm kind of indirectly worried about some of the smaller markets because I still think the dollar issue is a big issue there because these salaries are not coming down. Everybody in the NHL is getting 8 to 10 million, all the stars, and how can mid-market with lower budgets be able to handle that?
Well, the revenue is really flowing into the NHL. Do they have a revenue share program like the NFL?
Yeah, they have revenue share and a floor to spending. But
Okay.
by the same token, Calgary, Winnipeg, and some of these people can't afford to have a pile of $8 and $10 million players. The LA Kings might, the Boston Bruins might, the New York Rangers might, but some of the others can't. Hockey Hotline, stay with us through the course of the year. We'll continue to talk puck. John, next question.
Okay, let's go here. Talk of Mario. And he says, Flaherty was doing that to get a spark out of his team, LOL, and it didn't work. The $1 billion may not work also. Baseball is a very funny game, not guaranteed.
Oh, just piling on the Dodgers. Just feel free to take a shot. I'm sorry. Flaherty, his actions on the mound, plunking Tatis, yapping with Machado, then gets pulled from the game and reinserts all this commentary, dropping MFs all over the place right there on TV. I mean, he wasn't asking Manny if Manny wanted to help him move the chaise lounge in the living room. Why do that? Now you've created this furor with the fans. Now you've created this terrible image for yourself as a whiner and crier when you got the crap kicked out of you in the most important game you're pitching this season for the Dodgers. Why do that? Just accept the fact you got beat and get ready to go out there in the next round of the playoffs if you're still alive. So I just think he created an aura that has now put the Dodgers behind the 8 ball emotionally. And everybody in the whole bloody nation saw it on Sunday night. Think about that. So not a good look for Jack Flaherty. And he was a really great acquisition up until last night. But boy, he's kind of muddied the waters with the Dodgers right now. And Dave Roberts, he's got a lot of problems on his hands now. He's got this emotional trauma problem too.
This just speaks so highly, in my opinion, of Manny Machado and his leadership and maturity. The way that he rallied the team in that meeting in the dugout, because he was trying to prevent all of the hysteria from affecting the Padres, but clearly all of the hysteria affected Flaherty. He was reacting. He was behind, like you say, behind the eight ball. The Dodgers were losing. But that pitch to Tatis where he got plunked, I mean, I don't think that was on purpose. What did you think?
Well, Flaherty said after the game, I was trying to take command of the inside corner when I plunked him. That's baseball. But Manny was of the opinion you're throwing at him. Manny's response was in the post-game locker room meeting is, we're not throwing at Ohtani. Just because Ohtani hits home runs, we're not throwing at Ohtani. Why are you throwing at my guy? So that's where it is. But it was cool to see Machado put his guys in a group meeting in the dugout during the game. And I have no doubt in my mind what he was saying was focus, focus. Of course, he had the luxury of knowing we're kicking them and we're going home to Petco Park and we can end this sucker by Wednesday night. So yeah, you want retribution. You don't want your pitchers throwing at a Dodger and reigniting the Dodger lineup. Dodgers are feeling bad enough about where they are right now. But every game is different. Like I said, opening night loss, despite the fact they had a 3-0 lead, only counts as one game. Second game, 10-2 burn job, that only counts as one win. So we'll see what happens on Tuesday and Wednesday back at Petco Park. Buddy, it's going to be loud. And I just can't wait because Padre fan will bring back the gold towels and they're going to wave them and get excited. I tend to think they might be using the gold towels to wave goodbye to the Dodgers in his playoff series. Agree or disagree?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, if the Padres could win games 3 and 4, that'd be unbelievable. But there's a pretty good chance this is going to go back to Dodger Stadium. I mean, this series is just so fantastic. Manny Machado also, he even admitted, hey, Flaherty, man, you got me. You made some good pitches. Again, the maturity of Manny, I'm digging that. But Flaherty was saying something that Manny flipped the ball or threw the ball into the dugout for the Dodgers. Did you hear anything about that?
No, I didn't see that. I didn't hear that. All I know is in baseball terminology, that's what I wrote in my column. Flaherty comes off looking like a red ass. He's ignited. He's ignited this rivalry to another level. Oh, it's going to be fun. John, next topic.
Okay, let's move on here. Go to Greg. Lee, do you think the enthusiasm around the Padres and their fan base can energize an NFL return to San Diego?
Well, Greg's based in the Pacific Northwest, but at the end of the day, here's the storyline. We have no stadium. Who's going to build a new stadium in San Diego? Then you've got that construction cost, and then you get the cost of an expansion team, and the NFL has not indicated we're ready to expand. So thoughts of an NFL franchise in America's finest city, that's way down road. There's so many things that would have to happen. At this point, I don't see that happening in the next 5 years, maybe the next decade. We don't have a stadium to play in, period, exclamation point.
Yeah, but imagine just for a moment that we could channel all this energy to supporting San Diego State football. Because if they start winning, I think they can fill up Snapdragon Stadium, and I think it could be pretty special because San Diego's got a lot of money, a lot of sports fans, and a real hunger for a championship in town.
Well, I'm so disappointed that the Aztecs were not able to launch following by bringing ex-Charger fans into the fold. And I'm so stunned that deposed Charger fans, because I hardly think anybody from here is going to see guys at SoFi Stadium at the prices they're charging, that the defrocked Charger fans didn't embrace the Aztec football program, which had, a decade plus of really good football, different football under Rocky Long and Brady Hoke. So we'll just see how quickly Sean Lewis can make this thing into a first place program in the Mountain West Conference. And, we're still dealing with the fallout from the death of the Pac-12. Now what the Pac-2 is going to become with the expansion, but somebody's got to go a distance to tell me that what we're looking at in the future in 2026 is just not Mountain West Conference 2.0. Not that I'm not interested in it, but to me, there's nothing that grabs me by my sweatshirt and says, this is going to be great. because this is Mountain West Conference football more than it is anything else. I do think Gonzaga coming on board as a basketball member is really good. John, next question.
Moving on. Let's go here to Eng. And he says, Profar taunting the Dodgers like that is classless and trash. He needs to be plunked the next game.
Well, Profar does get under your skin. This is not the first time that Profar has done stuff that's infuriated the other dugout. And, he's gotten hit by 8 or 9 pitches. Some of them are just pitches inside. I don't know how many of those beanings were intentional. But at the end of the day, that's just part of his persona. Does he come off and look like a punk? Yeah, he kind of does. Did he kind of infuriate Dodger fan in left field after he went over the seats and pulled that ball back? Yeah, he did. Is there a little bit of showboating style to him? Sure is. Of course, dude is having an unbelievable season in the 280s with some power and playing a pretty aggressive left field. So is he wrong? Nah, he was just standing up, and it was a hell of a play. But that's who he is. I don't see Mookie Betts doing that. Obviously, I don't see Ohtani doing that. Will Smith has got a little bit of hair that he'll create some things behind home plate for the Dodgers. And obviously the Dodgers historically with some of their pitchers have jammed guys and thrown at guys and thrown behind guys. So it's got a different taste to the rivalry right now, but the Padres stood their ground, and now the Padres are going home, and there's going to be an awful lot of loud things said by Padre fan pulling out the gold towel to wave the Dodgers goodbye in this playoff series.
I love the way Profar handled that. I mean, obviously made a great catch and it was a big moment for him, but he didn't say anything, and he wasn't taunting the fans, but he was looking at them and kind of bouncing. It reminded me of when Julio Rodriguez or the Mariners robbed a home run from the Padres, and he held it for like 10, 15 seconds. And we were all wondering if it was a catch or not, but Profar handled it great. But if you're thinking who's a villain, who's a punk in these playoffs, who I'm upset about is Jesse Winker. That guy is something. I mean, he's an easy guy to hate.
Well, if he's on your team doing it, he's an easy guy to love, a.k.a. Profar. If Profar's doing it against your team, no, he's a punk. He's a troublemaker. He's an insider. So it was only for one game. These guys got to get back to playing baseball on Tuesday, and they will. John,
that's how I feel about Tommy Pham. When he's on my team, I like him, and when he's on the other team, I don't.
On we go.
Go to Steve here, and Steve says, Pods in 4. King will pitch a gem tomorrow.
He's on the beam. I mean, this is such a different looking pitcher right now. This is such a different confidence level. This is just another check mark on my theory that the intangible MVP in this Padres season has to be the pitching coach, Ruben Niebla, and what he's done for a wide variety of guys. Michael King just looks dominant right now, and he's so crafty, and they have refined his mechanics. And this is not the Michael King we saw in the month of April where he was walking guys and giving up bombs. This is a guy that's dominant. Michael King equals Greg Maddux right now in terms of painting the black and on the corners. Very, very impressive.
Well, think about that. I mean, with Michael King and Yu Darvish, these guys are pitchers. They're not flamethrowers, although they can throw it hard. It's just a different breed, and I think this works really well in this postseason. The Padres are just set up. If they don't choke, I think they have a chance to go all the way. This feels like the year.
Well, let's understand this. Focus on the Dodger series. Because I guarantee if they win this series, pal, they got to go to Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is a whole different situation in terms of dominant frontline pitching, established closer, and guys conducting home run derby every game that they play at Citizens Bank Ballpark. So, John, you sound like you're ordering World Series tickets right now. Let's not think about that. Let's just take care of business on Tuesday, Wednesday. Then we'll be talking about the city of brotherly love, a.k.a. brotherly hate, a.k.a. home run derby.
Well, I mean, just as a Padre fan that's been disappointed for so long, I can get a little ahead of myself, and I shouldn't. But, yeah, focus on Game 3, and we'll see how this goes. There's another comment about the next game. This is from Javi. He says, I think the Dodgers will get to King tomorrow. Only question is if Walker Buehler can keep the Padres down.
Well, I think the burning question is, now that you went with Flaherty and you went with the second pitcher, Yamamoto, and they had to pull him after 3, who are you going to give the ball to that you can trust? That's the big issue. Now, I grant you, Buehler can have a good outing, but Buehler's got an ERA of almost 6, so he's had very few good dominant outings as compared to shaky outings, and Buehler's putting a lot of guys on bases. This team does not strike out in San Diego, which means they keep innings extended, which means they make you throw a lot of pitches, which means they wear you out. And by the way, they put the ball in play and occasionally they hit home runs. So this is a very different Padre lineup right now. We'll just have to see what kind of pitcher Buehler shows up to be as we go towards Game 3. I don't think it's going to be easy. At the end of the day, this thing could be over by Wednesday night at 10 p.m. I firmly believe that just because of who the Padres are and what the Dodgers have dissolved into. Agree or disagree?
Well, I'm hopeful that that's correct. And I generally agree. I think there's a chance the Padres could, take the next 2 games. But let's look back here on Game 2 for a minute, because there was so much criticism of Dave Roberts throughout the last decade and how he handles the playoffs. Did you notice anything that Dave Roberts could have done better in Game 2?
The only concern I've had in the first 2 games I've seen, when you got pitchers that are scuffling, please tell me why Mark Pryor, the pitching coach who is their confidant, is sitting next to Dave Roberts for such long periods of time. When Yamamoto could not locate, and they have kind of intimated, they think, and they went back and looked at video, they think that Yamamoto was tipping off pitches from the stretch position. And he struggled. Why is Pryor sitting on the bench next to Dave Roberts and not going to the mound in the first inning or going to the mound in the second inning when Yamamoto is struggling? You need to sight and settle him down. You need to look and see if there's something wrong mechanically. You need to just go out there and talk to him for a minute and say, okay, what's not working for you? Let's go away from that pitch. Let's go to something else. And they did it. They could have done the exact same thing with Flaherty. I mean, you are allowed visits to the mound, so why not send Mark Pryor out there to converse with the pitcher and settle, especially the young pitchers down. Padres, Niebla wears a path out from a dugout to the mound to talk to pitchers who might be scuffling a little bit. Dodgers sit there and watch it happen to them. Don't do anything about it till it's too late. I mean, that's my observation. What's yours?
Well, isn't it interesting how when a pitching coach or even a manager goes to the mound, depending on the team and the circumstances, the pitcher could be upset, that they're either being coached or being pulled. But when Ruben Niebla goes out there, it's like, it's a strategy session and everyone really embraces that. So Niebla, like you say, he's the Padres MVP. I just think, though, that that Dave Roberts is damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. If the Dodgers win, they'll say, well, of course, you've got $1 billion you spent in the offseason. Of course, you're going to win. But if he loses, then he's going to get all the blame.
Well, he's damned as they are right now just because of the injuries. He doesn't have a pitching staff. I mean, just think about that scenario, the limitations on Yamamoto, the fact that Flaherty wasn't here to begin with. He's got one starting pitcher left from his rotation that we talked about back on opening day. Let's move on. Next question.
Okay, from the O Canada line, we want to hear from Yin, and she's saying, Hacksaw, thoughts on the Blue Jays keeping, I guess that's Shapiro and Atkins?
Well, they had a lot of injuries to their pitching staff. The first half of the season, they just did not hit. Now, of course, they fired the hitting coach. They fired coaches off that staff. But at the end of the day, they're keeping Schneider as the manager, and they're keeping the decision makers for one more year, and maybe next season becomes a bounce-back season. I thought they were going to have a really good year in the American League East, and they never left Dunedin healthy, and it just got worse and worse. And they had a flash at midseason where Guerrero suddenly got hot, but then Bichette got hurt and had to have the surgery. So they just got to stay the course, and I think they have belief in their players, and maybe the adversity the young pitchers had this season will help them become better, more mature players next year. And then maybe they won't have as many injuries as they've had. But yeah, they were a massive disappointment.
But the AL East still has the Yankees and the Orioles, and the Red Sox hopefully are going to start coming back. I mean, do you think, what's the toughest division in baseball right now?
Well, I think potentially on paper that could be a really banner division. But you have to understand Boston. I mean, they scuffled to get back to 500. They force-fed a lot of kids. They're a really young roster, and for the most part, they played well. Now, Boston's got make a decision on which of the young pitchers are really established or if they need to go do something in free agency. Baltimore, think about how frustrating this might be. Here's Baltimore won 100 games last year and got knocked out in their opening playoff round. This year, they had a pile of injuries to their staff, but yet they finished really strong and upbeat, and they got eliminated in the first round again. There's something missing in Baltimore. Now Corbin Burns goes on the free agent market. He was the ace of the pitching staff. So Baltimore, I think they need a veteran type bat, maybe on a short-term rental to complement Gunnar Henderson and all these other guys that they've got. So I think you're going to see Baltimore do something from an acquisition standpoint. Tampa Bay's got a lot of young pitching. Tampa Bay's got some good young players. They supposedly are going to trade some of the extra pitching, and historically they've always done that. They do need some veteran players on the Tampa Bay roster. Toronto needs to bounce back from a health perspective and maybe an attitude adjustment too. So we'll see what the offseason brings. But, December 1st and the winter baseball meetings, that's a little bit of ways away from here.
A little bit, yeah. And especially here in SoCal, we're thinking about what's going on with the playoffs. Here's a comment from Joseph. He says, I didn't like anything about that game. Padres players, Dodgers fans.
Yeah, I think it was kind of a game that stained a whole bunch of things. I'm sure there's out-of-town people that say, hey, Profar and Tatis, you haven't won bleep in the course of your careers. Why are you jumping up and down and carrying on with the gestures? You haven't won bleep. But they've beaten the hell out of the Dodger pitching staff 2 games in a row. And by the way, they've beaten them 9 times this season. The Dodgers and their $290 million payroll have been beaten 9 times by their little brother to the south. But there's a segment out there that's probably saying, hey, Padres, you haven't won anything. What are you doing? But there's also a segment out there that doesn't like big money Yankee Stadium, big money Chavez Ravine, and saying, way to go, San Diego. So we'll see which Dodger team shows up and if they can compete and hold their emotions in Game 3, or the Padres setting sail to finish these guys off by Wednesday night, move on to the next round in the series.
I liked everything about that game. And I'm not saying that just because I'm rooting for the Padres or that I was raised to not root for the Dodgers. It was just a wildly entertaining game. And it had so many different moments during that game that we remember, and the drama and the electricity and the fans and Profar, I thought, he can be a little bit of a punk, but not so bad. I don't think Profar was a problem. Tatis is young. He's playing with the crowd. In a lot of ways, I don't think what he did was bad either, but it just still was just a lot of fun. And so it was must-see TV. It was stressful in a good way, whereas Game 1 was stressful in a bad way.
We'll see what happens come Tuesday, Wednesday. John, let's touch bases on social media before we wrap up this podcast.
Okay, here we go. Let's go over to social media. Let's talk. Hey, how about a little Pete Rose commentary? And this is from Moonlight Fishing. And he says, Johnny Bench said that back in the day, baseball told Rose's teammates to distance themselves from Rose because he would get them in trouble. He ran with the wrong crowd and dabbled in unsavory activity.
Concur with you wholeheartedly. Rose had a lot of friends in baseball, guys that respected him as a player. I think as his life went on, he lost, and there was a lot of erosion of friendships personally, and obviously in what he got himself involved in as a manager with the Padres. And everything I read in the Dowd report just absolutely shocked me. He knows baseball history. He knows Shoeless Joe Jackson, Black Sox scandal, and yet he went out and he did all that. And Rose was just very independent. I thought he was a fabulous player. I think he was very much a flawed person. It leads to the debate, okay, he's dead and gone. So why should there be any further sanctions about somebody who's no longer here? And by the way, in Cooperstown, you've got all this memorabilia there on the first floor of the Hall of Fame. So even if you emotionally think he's in the Hall of Shame, you should allow his name to go on the ballot. But you do that, then you open up the case. Well, if there's going to be a set of rules for Pete Rose, is there a different set of rules for Shoeless Joe? And that then leads to the next segment of guys who did things wrong, a.k.a. your guy, Barry Bonds, and the stain of steroid juice, and Roger Clemens, the rogue pitcher. So we're going to draw the line in terms of citizenship versus just great individual talent. John, go ahead and respond. You're a baseball fanatic.
I think Pete Rose needs to be in the Hall of Fame. He has the record for the most hits. That has to stand. He needs to be acknowledged for what he did on the field, and they need to tell the story, the whole story. Like, just kind of a crazy tangent is I went to the Nixon Presidential Library about 4 or 5 years ago up in Yorba Linda, and they have a whole wing there talking about Watergate, so it's everything. They're telling the whole story, and I think they need to do the same thing with Pete Rose.
Well, as Bud Black said, the guys who affected the impact in the history of the game, statistically, as leaders, as personalities, deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Just put an asterisk next to the name so when you see it, you'll know what those guys did personally, but should it detract from them professionally? Each case obviously has to be handled different. Next one.
Hey, Lee, tilt your screen a little bit so you look like Kilroy looking over the edge of a fence. Okay, there we go. Now we can see you. Okay, let's go here. Talk about some of the conference realignment. That's always gets a ton of people commenting. And this is from Asa V. Says, if I ran the PAC12, this is what I would do. The West Division, Oregon State, Washington State, Boise State, Fresno State, San Diego State, and UNLV plus Gonzaga, St. Mary's. And the South Division, Colorado State, Utah State, Memphis, Tulane, SMU, South Florida, plus Grand Canyon and Wichita. So what do you think of that, Lee?
Not much. Thank you. No. Let's look at it from a different perspective. That's a lot of teams. Is there anybody there from the new names that he just posted are there any names there that carry national cachet? And by the way, this is the pie. How many ways you're going to split the pie financially? And you're going to go to the networks and say, Wichita State and South Florida, we want you to pay us a lot of money because they're going to be part of our. That doesn't make any sense to me. Getting Gonzaga does. I wish there was a way they could make a transaction to get BYU out of the Big 12 and add their football and their basketball program, which is pretty good, to the Pac-12. But they're going to have to add one more football program. And I just don't think going out of the Western region to go get these other schools makes a hell of a lot of sense. And by the way, Memphis is one violation under Penny Hardaway from going into NCAA jail. I don't know that you want to dabble with those guys. That's a nice idea, but there's no national brand there that grabs him by the shirt and says, this is going to attract TV network contracts. BYU would with Gonzaga, and it makes geographical sense. The rest of it, nah. There's nothing in the Conference USA or AAC that excites me. Johnny, got a different opinion out in left field?
Well, out of left field. Well, as they go into new markets, the pie should get bigger, right? Because there'll be more eyeballs, more advertising revenue. But when you look at some of those cities, like, if you're going to expand to Wichita, that's not much. Well, Grand Canyon could be something interesting. So I don't know. I originally, when I saw, names like Tulane and SMU, I was like, and even Memphis, I just wasn't really excited about it. But really, who else is left? I mean, there's nowhere else to go. And hoping that BYU comes back to the West Coast, or UCLA and Stanford and Cal decide to come back. I don't know if that's happening. There's too much money involved.
Well, there's a lot of money involved, but you got some unhappiness in the Bay Area right now. This ACC thing with Cal and Stanford doesn't look good. And BYU might have jumped out of the independent status a year or two early to go to the Big 12. And if these guys are not getting the full boat of money that all those other conference members are, then maybe there's an exit strategy they can employ, which will allow Brigham Young, UCLA, Cal, Stanford to come back. And now suddenly that West Coast Conference looks a lot different. Next, social media. Who wants to sound off?
Okay, let's go here. Talk about the Dodgers' way is broken. And this is from Greg. And he says, why are so many injured is a great question, but using Kershaw, Buehler, and Glasnow as examples isn't. Clayton should have retired a year ago, meaning he's old and fragile. Buehler might just be one of those guys that never recovers from TJ surgery. And Glasnow has a history of being injured late in the season.
Yeah, that's a good point. However, this is just not the guys on the 12-man pitching staff. You go through the farm system, and they've had serious surgical issues. A whole bunch of hot prospects have broken down along the way. We did the full screen board picture 2 weeks ago on our podcast, which the Dodgers used 38 pitchers this season. Dodgers had 19 different starting pitchers. Dodgers have had 7 major surgeries. This, I think it's an epidemic within the whole structure of the Dodger franchise. It's just not Buehler and bad luck, or just not Kershaw. I mean, when you lose Michael Grove and you look at some of the other young pitchers that have already had to have the surgeries, and what's happened to Dustin May twice, and then the third surgery Dustin May's had, there's an awful lot of guys that are not here. So the Dodgers, and they've openly admitted, they have to do a reevaluation top to bottom of where this organization is, how it acquires pitchers, how they train pitchers, what they demand of their pitchers. But there's also a philosophical thing from the players. And Walker Buehler was quoted as saying, "I am a Dodger pitcher. Dodger pitching means max effort. Dodger pitching means all these wide variety of pitches. Dodger pitching means there is risk involved. If I win, we win. If I win, we win, and I get a bigger contract. I am a major league pitcher, and I'm willing to take on the risk to do it the Dodger way." That's coming from the ACR staff, who's now had 2 surgeries and has not come back to be the same pitcher, as he keeps sending them out every 5th day. Tough way to operate. And I'll tell you, it's going to be very interesting to see from a health evaluation how they're going to change the culture of Dodger pitching, John.
Yeah, I mean, they got to make some big decisions here. I think I heard someone mention that the Dodgers pitching in the minor leagues had the highest overall fastball velocity in baseball. I don't know if that was true or not, but if it is, that's what they're telling them to throw hard. Maybe they could learn a lot from seeing Yu Darvish and Michael King and even Yamamoto, that there's a different way to throw.
Concur. It's going to be a very interesting off-season, off the field for the Dodgers and the evaluation of their culture and their philosophy. Let's take one more. What else you got there, John?
How about some Chargers talk? And this is from Zonka. It says, before the injuries to the offensive line, it was working. Dominated the line of scrimmage for the first 2.5 weeks. I think Alt plays next week against Denver, and Slater won't miss many more games after that.
Well, the only difference of opinion I have is they did that game 1 against the Raider Nation. Look where the Raiders are. Game 2, they pounded the ball against who? Carolina. What's their record? So at the end of the day, when they started playing real people, look what happened in the Kansas City game. Look what happened in the last game in Pittsburgh. At the end of the day, I don't know how to word this. It's early in the process. They need to be able to get their offensive linemen back on the field. Alt looks like he's coming back, which is a lot quicker than a lot of people thought. But this is the second pectoral injury to Slater. That's got to be an issue. I think they have a deficiency at center. And the quarterback's taken way too many shots. I mean, Justin Herbert has now had 5 different injuries over a span of about 3 years. He's taken an awful lot of hits. We'll just see, where they are coming off the bye week as they get ready to dive back into the schedule. And if they continue to run it, my quiet fear, and that's probably why Zonka is making this comment, my private fear is they are so mandating run the football, pound the football, pound the football, that the thing that made Herbert great, which was his aggressiveness down the field and his ability to throw, it's kind of gone away, because Justin Herbert statistically has not had any big games yet, and we're 5 games into the Charger season. So we'll see coming over this bye week how many guys are healthy, and can they fast forward the development. Their passing game looks really pedestrian to me, even though Quentin Johnston has done okay in some games, and McConkey looks like a keeper, but he's a route runner. He's not a deep down the field terrorist threat. So we'll see if they can run it, and if they can hit bigger plays through the passing game, and if they can protect Herbert, because right now they haven't done all that on a consistent basis unless they were playing somebody's bad team. John?
Well, when some of the NFL analysts, praise Herbert, what are the things that they praise him for? I mean, I noticed that when he's in the pocket, he'll move around and step forward in the pocket and hit receivers downfield. But what are some of the other intangibles or skill sets that he brings?
Smart guy. You could take your GPA, my GPA in college, and add it together, and it wouldn't equal the GPA that the kid who got appointed for a Rhodes Scholarship got at the University of Oregon. He's smart as a cookie. Strong arm, accurate arm. Now, moves the pocket, explosive at 6'6". He can run. thing is, he's taken an awful lot of hits along the way, and that's been a deterrent because he's starting to build a track record of getting beat up and banged up, and you really don't want that in your quarterback. But I think he's sharp, and I think there's just so many positives to him, and it's been an issue. He's had good people, a lot of great people around him, and maybe they're building it. But I think you and I said this the first week of September when we did our preview. I think they're one more good draft away from arriving, but they got to keep that quarterback on the field. But there's an awful lot of positives to Justin Herbert.
Yeah. Do you think Jim Harbaugh is satisfied with where they are right now in sort of this progress to a new era?
He's lost a bunch of games early on. He didn't lose as many at Michigan, but it takes time. They're just got to be patient. They have to work their way through it. I don't think he's not going to allow that locker room to become an emotional roller coaster. They're just going to stay the course and keep on going and just hope they can get the quarterback on the field and get the quarterback healthy, and then they can protect the quarterback because that quarterback drives a lot of things that are there. But same token, that offensive front's got to get healthy. Same token, they need Joey Bosa in his $30 million contract to stay on the field too. So there's a whole pile of things that Harbaugh has to hope work out. Hey, listen, we hope you have enjoyed this wide variety of our Monday